Welcome to CD Club. Today I will have a special guest, German Ambassador to Slovakia, Her Excellency Barbara Wolf, who is leaving Slovakia after 4 years service in Bratislava. Welcome, Madam Ambassador, dear Barbara. I'm very happy that we are able to conduct this interview just a couple days before you are leaving. Would you please wrap up your diplomatic career so far? You are serving in diplomacy for many years. Where have you served so far?
First of all, thank you, Pavel, for having me. So my career has basically been divided between two regions, between Europe and between the Near and Middle East. I started off with Jordan. I worked 4 years in Brussels, among them 2 years in the European Commission. And at that time, I came first to know the Slovak Republic and also you. Then I've been to Lithuania, I've been to Paris, I've been to Palestine, and lately I've been to Iraqi Kurdistan.
Wow, such a spread of countries. And if you would compare your mission to Slovakia, where you served as ambassador, with your previous assignments, how would it compare?
So first of all, it was my 4th assignment in the European Union country, so I do have quite some experience on European matters, but I think 2 things made this day special. The first one, I arrived in COVID times, and COVID has been an exceptional event, but it has been exceptional also for diplomats, because part of our profession is building personal contacts, and it has been extremely difficult to do this arriving in COVID. And looking back, I also arrived during the German EU presidency. So I feel that COVID has sort of had a big impact on my stay here. And the other big event, big impact, is the Russian aggression on Ukraine. And I think the war coming back to Europe, this has been a major change and is continuing to be a major change for foreign policy.
Germany, it is generally recognized that your country is a key partner for Slovakia. There are multiple relations in the field of economy, culture, and other fields. What were the main topics you were dealing with? And just to remind this episode with COVID, which very often we are already forgetting, you started with mask, and I hope you have a picture with Madam President during your ceremony in Presidential Palace in mask.
And I did have a mask with the logo of the German EU presidency. But as you know, as a EU presidency, normally you organize some meetings with politicians during the presidency. So I had to do this via VTC, via video conference, and I did it once with Madam President, which was very kind, which was a little bit easier because I had met her in person. I did it once with then Foreign Minister Korczok, which was also easier because I met him in person. But we did one VTC with then Finance Minister Heger, whom I had not met in person before. And it has been quite an experience of doing this by VTC, and then also sort of coordinating colleagues, asking questions. But it's always a super opportunity for us EU ambassadors to have direct contact with the government. And that's why I have been very grateful being able to organize these video conferences.
Since we have 20 years after Slovakia joined the EU and NATO, with Germany as key actor, also we are having 31 years since we established diplomatic relations. So far, not a single German ambassador had experience with 4 prime ministers and 4 foreign ministers, so also time was quite turbulent, both in Slovak domestic politics, but also, as you mentioned, global and European level. So what were the key issues you and your team at Embassy dealt with in 4 years since you are with us here?
You mentioned already that Slovak-German relations are extremely dense and are extremely diverse, and what I could witness here is the economic, commercial relations, the culture and education relation. But I think what was special is that we developed a completely new level of security and military cooperation. And since you also mentioned NATO and EU, this all takes place in the umbrella of our NATO membership and our membership in the European Union. And especially with the presence of German troops in the NATO enhanced vigilance activities, this was one core activity of my stay here, and definitely a complete newly area which we have developed.
If you would be asked to wrap up some of the key achievements which you as ambassador and your colleagues at German embassy achieved in 4 years, what would be the highlights?
Good that you mentioned the team, because I had the pleasure of working extremely closely with our team from the military attaché staff, and I think we have been a good team which adds also its expertise but also the way of working, and I think helping to support the German army to arrive here extremely fast. And I think one of my memories is that we had the debate in Parliament, the vote in Parliament on the presence of the NATO force, and the next day our Patriot systems were on the way, on the highway. And then I think we managed over now 2.5 years to have a presence of the troops, good cooperation with other parts. I think very grateful for the Slovak host nations. But at the beginning we have been here together with the Netherlands forces. Now we are here together with Slovenian forces, with the Czech forces, with American forces, managing this cooperation, being there for the soldiers, at the same time having a political dialogue with the government but also with Parliament, and making sure that this is a common endeavor. And I think very important political point, NATO membership is about solidarity. And what has been changing really is I think we are seeing the first major security threat for a long time coming to Europe. As I said, we have war back in Europe, and we are partners in NATO. We stand for each other's security, and I think this even makes me a little bit proud to have been part of this collective security, solidarity, assistance, standing for each other.
Yeah. I think that no one expected when you arrived in summer of 2020, COVID was something occupying us, but that you will be dealing with military issues so heavily, and because previously we were proud having Volkswagen and various other commercial activities, and suddenly this became such an important element for our bilateral relations and presence of your soldiers, equipment and all of this. Where do you see this cooperation in NATO, if we started talking about that, is leading? Because new President Peter Pellegrini will go to NATO summit in Washington next month. I hope that your President or Chancellor is going as well. How do you assess NATO and our joint efforts, German, Slovak, within framework of alliance?
Just let me start by looking back again, because in the middle of the 90s I started for the first time to work on defense and security issues. And I remember well at the time, we have to remember it was relatively shortly after reunification, how German armed forces started to discuss about their international engagements, and we have been doing very cautious steps on building up. But I think over the last years also our armed forces became an integral part of crisis management operations. But what we are doing now and focusing much more is on collective defense. This is, as we said earlier, nothing we had expected. In Germany we call it a Zeitenwende, and I think it's a sometimes maybe underestimated policy shift which is taking place in Germany. A policy shift towards Russia, which for a long time we had considered an integral partner of also Euro-Asian security. but also a shift on our role of
Yeah.
the armed forces. And I think this brings us back to what you ask. We feel that this is the key NATO topic. How are we strengthening our resilience, our collective defense? We have seen already quite some debate on NATO presence on the eastern flank. We have been part of this. Now we see some restructuring, now with new regional structures from NATO, and we will be seeing here also Spanish troops taking over the lead. So I think how NATO is getting ready for a protracted conflict, for a serious security threat coming from Russia, this is the main topic also for the summit, and how can we collectively support Ukraine.
Who will attend? President or Chancellor?
In our
from
case,
Germany?
it's the Chancellor who is
Chancellor
attending.
is going. Now, as far as economic situation nowadays, where are we now with trade and some parameters or some figures, if you would share some of the facts on economic cooperation between Slovakia and Germany?
So I'm not good with figures, but we still continue to be by far the main trading partner, and it's quite important for us. What I have been the pleasure of seeing happen over the last years, as you said earlier, people always think manufacturing of cars is the key component. It still is. But I personally could witness a couple of new interesting developments. Also, for example, new research units being established by German companies. We recently had a major biotechnology investment coming. So I think also our investment is adapting, is scaling up, and is intensifying. And I think that's very important for us.
I would like to ask also about education, research, science. Are there some new trends, or what happened during your stay in this area?
We are very active in schools, but also at universities. One of the also nice developments I saw when I arrived, one of my first appointments was at the German school, at the new building of the German school here in Quarmare, and this was at the start of the reconstruction phase. And now I've been there last Friday, as every year, for the handing over of the Abitur certificates. It's became a beautiful building, it's an open building, it's a building which reflects also lessons which have been learned during COVID. So there is much more use of computer technology, it's flexible. We had a group of over 10 students graduating, and I think seeing a German school flourishing and seeing also investments in education, which are key, it's very promising. Again, this week we will still have the yearly competition Jugend debattiert, Youth is debating, where we have pupils from all of Slovakia, and we have also a school in Poprad, which have been supporting for many years, who are training their skills in debating in German language, which is not only a language exercise, but also an exercise of political discourse. So I still feel we are very strong there, and I feel more and more how key these education activities are.
I attended several events organized by Goethe Institute or a group of your political foundation. This is one of the specialty which German embassy has, what other embassies of Western democracies don't have. Could you comment on some of the activities of these organizations?
That's an excellent point, because political foundations are in a way also an instrument of the parliament, and they are also reflecting the composition of the parliament. And also their partners are corresponding a little bit to their political orientation, which makes them an extremely helpful and diversified channel of mechanisms. Also, some of the foundations celebrated their 30 years, and I also attended some of the celebrations, and it's enormous, their network which they have been developed. not only with political partners, but also with partners in the regions. And I think our experience is that political foundations are a key instrument of a multi-vector policy also. We have seen the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, which so many years has been doing academies for politicians, for young politicians. We see the same for the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung and Hans Seidel Stiftung. So I can only commend their activities, and I know that many politicians have been profiting from these.
And Goethe
trainings.
Institute? Goethe Institute?
Goethe Institute, also I think very strong on language. We always underestimate, but I think they are providing an excellent language capabilities, but also their cultural program. They have an excellent library, and they have good exchange also with, for example, writers coming from Germany. Recently we had the Literary Festival. They also try to go out of Bratislava, which is important. Goethe Institute has at least 2 lecture rooms, also with services in Banska Bystrica, for example. So also fostering a lot of cooperation. And recently, also because we talked about the Russian aggression on Ukraine, providing refuge also for activities from Ukrainians on Ukraine. They have a very successful reading club of Ukrainian lecture, and I think this also shows a good way of working on many levels. And one thing, please, to add is also we have German companies who have established foundations. We have the Volkswagen Foundation, so they are very much profiting from the 2%. And there is an excellent cooperation between Volkswagen Stiftung and the Goethe Institute, supporting some of their literature events or some also German activities, which is an excellent model of cooperation between business and culture and education.
Could you mention some cooperation between your embassy and Slovak think tank or NGO community members? Because these bilateral ties between our 2 countries are facilitated by this think tank community, and I know that you attended several of events where I had pleasure to be as well. So your position on that, because why I'm asking this question as well, today we are having this debate. Some politicians think that think tanks, NGOs shouldn't step into world of politics. This should be a job for political parties. So how would you assess their position, role, and also if you could mention few common activities which you have conducted together?
On foreign policy, it's the Slovak Foreign Policy Association, which is also a formal part of our cooperation, because one of the instruments we are having is the reflection group, and this combines the 2 ministries, but also the Slovak Foreign Policy Association and Stiftung Wissenschaft Politik, one of the major think tanks in Berlin. And between Stiftung Wissenschaft and Politik and the Slovak Foreign Policy Association, the agenda is being set up, and they also organize this regular meeting. So again, they are important partners, but they are also important transmission instruments, because they reach out to a different public. And I remember one excellent reflection group we had here, and I think this was in December 22, where we also discussed, for example, about security cooperation. And I think for both sides it opened new perspectives. Another area I think where we very much worked on with civil society is on the Ukraine crisis. And also we are very much impressed by some Ukrainian local initiatives. Zmes Bolu, which is a refugee-led or Ukrainian-led group providing support to Ukrainians. Also, when our foreign minister Annalena Baerbock visited Bratislava, we paid a visit to these NGOs. I just come from the meeting of the Human Rights League, so I'm very much impressed, and I have witnessed this already in my first experience with Slovakia about the vibrant civil society. And I think it's in all our interest to support them.
Who were your key partners as ambassador of Germany in diplomatic community? Because Slovakia is not a big country and diplomatic corps is rather cohesive, and diplomats try to cooperate, work together on several issues. Could you mention a few initiatives and with whom you were able to achieve some of the goals which you had during your mission?
I think first of all the European Union colleagues are our main partners, and what made it special also that we had a very nice active group of female ambassadors, and for example as female ambassadors we also organized also with the Slovak partners, for example, days where young girls, young women could make a stage at the embassy and then learn a little bit how embassies work and share their experience. So I think this is one of the examples where we worked also in a group. Sometimes it's a lot of countries who you share values with, but as you know, a lot of this is personal contacts, personal sympathies, and definitely one of the big advantages of working in Bratislava is have an extremely pleasant, motivated and friendly diplomatic community. I think with the Ukrainian embassy we worked much more over the last years with the military attaché, with the ambassador, which also is a pleasure to work with. And,
how do you assess cultural life in Bratislava? Were there some museums, galleries, theaters which you enjoyed and which something will stay in your memory, what you attended, some from the field of culture?
It's a privilege of being invited so often, both to the Viduta Philharmonics, but also to the Slovak National Theatre. What stays with me also, and this is the moment also to remember him, Jacques Martin Händler, who unfortunately passed away too soon, the son of Holocaust survivors, born in Bratislava, making a career in music, first as a violinist and then also as a director of orchestras. He has been one of our close partners, a true European, someone who worked for reconciliation all his life, an optimist, a humanist, and I think
I like him
miss
very
him.
much. We miss him definitely. You in 4 years visited many parts of Slovakia. Are there some which you would recommend your successor that you definitely need to go there because I enjoyed like that place?
I think there are lots of places to go to the smaller hidden places. I've been very much impressed by Bardejov and the region, Banská Bystrica, Banská Štiavnica. There is a very nice project also being promoted by Banská Bystrica, is about the Fuggerstraße, which is a new project also linking cities in Europe, and linking cities in Europe showing also how connections can be of mutual benefit, showing also how good the connections have been many centuries ago for many reasons, and I think showing that Europe is a common space of movement, a common space also of enriching each other, and I think that's important to keep in mind.
Barbara, if you may, who will replace you? Is it secret or it is already decided and you can share the name of new German ambassador who will succeed you?
Among diplomatic procedures is a quite thorough preparation of who is coming. So my successor's name is Thomas Koetz. He's now coming from Berlin. He's taking up mid-July, so there won't be a long vacancy, and I'm sure he's looking forward.
And your next steps?
I'm going back to Berlin to join the inspection services.
So you will be working at Ministry of Foreign Affairs again? Barbara, I wanted to thank you for accepting my invitation to do this farewell interview, and I want to thank you for all your service, your friendship to so many of us in Slovakia, and I wish you good luck in your future career. And I'm sure that since you will be inspector, you may come and inspect a little bit what's going on in Slovakia. You will be always welcome here.
Thank you very much, and it has been a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.